My name is Archer, and at 65 years old, I have spent over 3 decades building a successful career as a TV chef with my popular cooking show, Classic American Kitchen. But long before the cameras and cookbooks, I was indeed just a waiter, working double shifts to put food on my own family's table. I never imagined that at my daughter Sophia's wedding, my new son-in-law Bradley would use my humble beginnings as a weapon to humiliate me in front of everyone. What he did not expect was how quickly his smug smile would vanish. Before I tell you how my son-in-law's face changed when everyone at the wedding saw me on the big screen, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had to swallow your pride for family's sake. I grew up in a blue-collar family in Dearborn, Michigan, where my father worked at the Ford assembly plant for 37 years. He taught me the value of honest work and showing up every day, no matter how tired you felt. Those lessons would serve me well, though I had no idea just how much I would need them. After barely graduating high school with average grades, college was not in the cards for me. I needed to work, and waiting tables was one of the few decent-paying jobs I could get without a degree. My first job was at Jerry's Diner, a 24-hour greasy spoon, where the tips were mediocre but the hours were flexible. "You got good hands, kid," Jerry told me after my first month. "Fast and steady. You might make something of yourself someday." Those words stuck with me, though. At the time I thought he was just being nice to the new guy. I was living in a studio apartment with a mattress on the floor, a TV balanced on a milk crate, and dreams no bigger than making rent each month. When I was 26, I landed a job at Castellano's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. The pay was better, and the clientele tipped well when you provided exceptional service. I took pride in memorizing the specials, learning about wine pairings, and anticipating what guests needed before they asked. It was at Castellano's where I met Amanda. She came in with friends one Friday night, and I was assigned to their table. She had this laugh that carried across the room, genuine and unrestrained. When I brought their appetizers, she asked detailed questions about the preparation that none of my usual customers ever bothered with. "You really know your stuff," she said, her blue eyes meeting mine. "Are you a chef in training?" "Just a waiter," I replied, the phrase that would haunt me decades later. "But I like knowing what I am serving." She left her number on the receipt, and we had our first date the following week. Amanda was working as an elementary school teacher, passionate about her students and living on a budget as tight as mine. We connected over simple pleasures, walks in the park, cooking affordable meals together in her tiny kitchen, dreaming about a future that seemed just out of reach. We married 2 years later in a modest ceremony at her parents' backyard. Her father, a retired Navy man, shook my hand firmly and said, "Take care of my girl. That is your job now." I promised him I would, and I meant every word. When Amanda became pregnant with Sophia, the stakes suddenly got higher. I was still waiting tables, working double shifts, and picking up every catering gig I could find. The apartment we rented was too small for a family, but we could not afford anything bigger. "We will make it work," Amanda assured me, one hand resting on her growing belly. "Babies do not need much space, just love." Sophia arrived on a rainy Tuesday in April, perfect and tiny, with a full head of dark hair like her mother's. Holding her in the hospital, I made a silent vow that she would have opportunities I never had. She would never know the anxiety of living paycheck to paycheck. To make ends meet, I worked mornings at a breakfast place and evenings at Castellano's, catching naps when I could, and seeing my daughter and wife only in the brief windows between shifts. The exhaustion was bone deep, but quitting was not an option. It was during this time that I discovered my knack for cooking. At Castellano's, one of the line cooks quit mid-shift during a busy Saturday service. The kitchen was in chaos, orders backing up, and the chef shouting at anyone who came near. "You waiter, can you cook?" he barked at me when I came to check on my table's orders. "I can follow directions," I answered honestly. He thrust an apron at me too. Station 3. Follow the tickets. Do not mess up. That night changed everything. The adrenaline, the precision, the immediate satisfaction of creating something with my hands that others would enjoy. I was hooked. The chef, a temperamental Italian named Marco, noticed my enthusiasm and offered me extra hours in the kitchen when they were short-staffed. "You have talent," he told me gruffly, after I mastered his grandmother's marinara recipe. "But talent without training is wasted. Take classes." The community college offered night courses in culinary arts. I enrolled using the small Christmas bonus I had saved. For 2 years, I worked days, attended classes at night, and practiced techniques at home whenever I could. Amanda supported me completely, tasting my experimental dishes and offering honest feedback. "This is your calling," she said after I prepared my first soufflé that actually rose properly. "I always knew you were meant for more than carrying other people's food." When Sophia was 4, I landed my first real kitchen job as a line cook at the Windsor, one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city. The pay was less than I made waiting tables, but it was a foot in the door. Amanda picked up extra tutoring hours to help with our budget, never once complaining about the sacrifice. Working in a professional kitchen was nothing like cooking at home, or even my shifts helping at Castellano's. It was military precision, verbal abuse, and physical demands that left me with burns cuts and aching feet. But I thrived on the discipline and the craft. Over the next 15 years, I worked my way up through the ranks, line cook, sous chef, and finally head chef at increasingly respected establishments. The hours were brutal. I missed school plays, parent-teacher conferences, and many of Sophia's milestones. Amanda would record videos and show them to me when I dragged myself home after midnight. "Daddy, watch what I can do," Sophia would say in these recordings, executing a cartwheel or showing off an art project. It broke my heart not to be there, but I told myself it was temporary. I was building something for her future. When Sophia was 19 and in her first year at an expensive private college, I was proud to pay for my big break finally came. A food television producer dined at Harrington's, where I had been head chef for 3 years. He was impressed enough to invite me to do a cooking demonstration on a morning show. "You have a natural camera presence," he told me afterward. "Authentic, approachable, but still authoritative. Have you ever considered television?" Within 6 months, I was filming the pilot for Classic American Kitchen, a show that focused on elevating traditional American comfort food with professional techniques. The network liked my straightforward approach and the way I explained complex methods in simple terms. The first season was a modest success, enough to secure a renewal. By the 3rd season, we had a dedicated following, and cookbook offers started coming in. After decades of grinding work, success arrived seemingly overnight. Suddenly, I was signing autographs at food festivals and being recognized in grocery stores. Our financial situation transformed. We moved from our modest suburban home to a spacious house in an affluent neighborhood. Sophia transferred to an Ivy League university with tuition no longer a concern. Amanda was able to quit teaching and pursue her passion for painting. "You did it?" Amanda said the night we moved into our new home. "You gave us everything you promised." "We did it," I corrected her. "I would not be here without you believing in me." What I did not realize then was that while I had achieved the financial security I had always wanted for my family, I had created a distance between myself and my daughter that would be difficult to bridge. As my career flourished, Sophia blossomed into a young woman who barely resembled the little girl I remembered. The memories I had of her were fragmented snapshots. Her first steps, school graduations, I managed to attend, rushed birthday celebrations between my shifts. Now she was a sophisticated college student, with expensive tastes and friends from wealthy families. When Sophia came home for holidays, our conversations felt forced. She would talk about philosophy professors, study abroad programs, and social events with names I did not recognize. I would share stories from the restaurant or television set, but I could see her interest was merely polite. "Dad, no one says cool beans anymore," she informed me once, rolling her eyes when I used the phrase. Small corrections like this peppered our interactions, gentle reminders that I did not fit into her world. Amanda tried to bridge the gap. "Tell your father about your art history paper," she would prompt during dinner. "Archer Sophia is considering a semester in Paris." I would listen and ask questions, trying to connect with this stranger who was my child. Sometimes I would catch glimpses of the sweet, curious girl I remembered when she laughed unguardedly at a joke, or when she fell asleep on the couch during a movie, her head resting on my shoulder, like when she was small. During her junior year, Sophia called with news. "I have met someone," she said, her voice higher than usual with excitement. "His name is Bradley Harrington." The Harrington name was familiar even to me. They were old money with buildings named after them at several prestigious universities. Bradley was studying law, came from a long line of judges and politicians, and had, according to Sophia, incredible connections. The first time Bradley came home with Sophia for Thanksgiving, the differences between our worlds became painfully apparent. He arrived wearing a sweater that probably cost more than my first car, speaking in the confident tones of someone who had never been told no. "So you cook on television," he said, more statement than question. "That must be an interesting career path." "It has its moments," I replied, trying to be diplomatic, "though I spent most of my career in actual restaurant kitchens." He responded, clearly unimpressed. "My family has invested in several restaurant groups. Much better to be on the ownership side than the service side, I always say." Throughout the weekend, Bradley made similar comments, each one underlining the class difference he perceived. He spoke about his family's summer home in the Hamptons, their connections to senators and CEOs, and his plans to join his father's law firm. Amanda squeezed my hand under the table whenever Bradley was particularly condescending. Later, in the privacy of our bedroom, she voiced what I was thinking. "He is a pretentious jerk," she said bluntly. "I hope this is just a phase." But it was not a phase. By Sophia's senior year, she and Bradley were discussing marriage. When they announced their engagement during Christmas dinner, I plastered a smile on my face while feeling my heart sink. "We are thinking a June wedding," Sophia told us. "Bradley's mother knows the perfect venue." I had always imagined being involved in planning my daughter's wedding, perhaps even catering it myself. But it quickly became clear that my role would be limited to writing checks. "Mrs. Harrington has everything under control," Sophia assured us during one of our increasingly rare phone conversations. "She has experience with these types of events." These types of events apparently meant lavish society weddings with guest lists approaching 300 people, most of whom I had never met. When the estimated costs started rolling in, I nearly choked on my coffee. "Sweetheart, this is more than our house cost," I told Sophia gently. "Dad, please do not make this about money," she replied, frustration evident in her voice. "This is my special day." So I said nothing more, transferring funds for deposits on venues I had never seen and flowers whose names I could not pronounce. Amanda worried about my silence. "Talk to her," she urged. "Tell her how you feel about being sidelined." But I could not bring myself to do it. "She is happy," I said instead, I do not want to ruin this for her. As the wedding approached, the distance between Sophia and me grew. Traditional father of the bride duties were either eliminated or assigned to Bradley's father. When I asked about the father-daughter dance, Sophia looked uncomfortable. Actually, we are doing something different, she explained. Bradley and I will have the first dance, then his parents will join, then everyone else. It is more modern. I nodded and accepted each exclusion, telling myself it was her day, not mine. But the truth was that each small rejection stung, each one a reminder that I was no longer central to my daughter's life. A week before the wedding, Bradley's parents hosted a small dinner for the wedding party and immediate family at their country club. I felt out of place among the golf trophies and oil paintings of former club presidents. Archer, Bradley's mother, Victoria, approached me with an air kiss near each cheek. Bradley tells me you have some sort of cooking program. Yes, classic American kitchen, I replied. We are in our 8th season. How quaint, she said with a thin smile. I do not watch much television myself, but I am sure it is very nice. Throughout the evening, I overheard snippets of conversation about me. Bradley, loosened by several glasses of expensive scotch, was holding court with his groomsmen. Sophia's dad used to be a waiter, he said with a chuckle. Can you imagine from carrying plates to carrying a TV show? Talk about a Cinderella story. His friends laughed, and I pretended not to hear, focusing instead on my perfectly cooked but somehow tasteless steak. Amanda's face flushed with anger, but I placed a calming hand on her arm. It is not worth it, I whispered. We go home tomorrow. But the comments continued throughout the rehearsal dinner and into the wedding weekend, each one a paper cut, small but painful, accumulating into a constant sting. I weathered them with as much dignity as I could muster, reminding myself that this was about Sophia, not me. The night before the wedding, Sophia came to our hotel room. For a moment, I saw vulnerability in her eyes, a flicker of my little girl. Are you walking me down the aisle tomorrow? She asked, as if suddenly uncertain. Of course, I said, throat tight with emotion. I would not miss it for the world. She hugged me then briefly, but genuinely. Thank you, Dad, for everything. For that moment, all the slights and exclusions were forgotten. My daughter still needed me for this one traditional role, and I would perform it perfectly. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect June morning that costs extra in wedding packages. I dressed carefully in the custom tuxedo that had been delivered to our hotel room, Amanda helping with my cufflinks and straightening my tie. You look handsome, she said, smoothing my lapel. Very distinguished. Distinguished is just code for old. I joked, though my smile did not quite reach my eyes. Amanda saw through me as she always did. Are you okay? I just want to get through this day without any drama, I admitted. For Sophia's sake. The ceremony was being held at the Harrington family's church, a grand stone building with stained glass windows and a pipe organ. When we arrived, I was immediately separated from Amanda, who was directed to help Sophia with last-minute preparations. I found myself alone in a side room surrounded by Bradley's relatives, who spoke around me rather than to me. The wedding coordinator, a brisk young woman with a clipboard, eventually located me. Mr. Miller, we need you with the bridal party now, she said, checking something off her list. The ceremony begins in 20 minutes. I was led to a small antechamber where Sophia stood in her wedding gown, a creation of lace and silk that transformed her into someone I barely recognized. Her makeup was flawless, her dark hair swept up in an elaborate style adorned with tiny pearl pins. Sophia, I said, emotion making my voice rough. You look beautiful. Thanks, Dad, she replied, distracted by adjusting her veil. Is everything going okay out there? I think so, I answered, though I had no real information to offer. I had been as much a bystander as any guest. The coordinator reappeared. Places everyone, Mr. Miller, you will enter with Sophia after the bridesmaids. The ceremony proceeded exactly as rehearsed. I walked my daughter down the aisle, feeling both proud and somehow separate from the moment, as though I were watching it happen to someone else. When the minister asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" I said the practiced words, "Her mother and I do," then stepped aside. I took my seat not in the front row with Amanda, but in the second row, as Bradley's extended family had filled the traditional parents' spots. Another small slight that I swallowed silently. The reception was held at an exclusive country club overlooking a lake. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, flower arrangements taller than me adorned each table, and a string quartet played as guests arrived. The cost of this single evening would have covered years of Sophia's college education. During the cocktail hour, I stood with Amanda, both of us feeling somewhat out of place despite being the parents of the bride. Bradley's father, Richard, approached us with his wife. "Quite the affair, is not it?" he said, gesturing with his champagne glass. "Victoria has outdone herself with the planning." "It is lovely," Amanda replied politely. "Sophia looks so happy." "Yes, well, she is a Harrington now," Victoria said with a satisfied smile. "She will have every advantage." The implication that being our daughter had somehow been a disadvantage hung in the air. I took a large sip of my drink rather than respond. The reception continued with the grand entrance of the wedding party. Sophia and Bradley were announced as Mr. and Mrs. Bradley Harrington. No mention of the Miller family at all. They proceeded to their first dance, a choreographed affair that spoke of professional lessons. When it came time for toasts, I reached for the speech I had carefully prepared and rehearsed for weeks. But the microphone was handed directly to Richard Harrington, who spoke at length about the bright future ahead for the couple and the joining of the Harrington name with new blood. I leaned toward Amanda. Was I supposed to give a toast? She shook her head slightly. Apparently not. The coordinator never mentioned it to me. Another tradition, another exclusion. I tucked my unread speech back into my pocket, where it crinkled against my heart. As dinner was served, I found myself seated at a table not with family, but with distant relatives of the Harringtons and a few of Sophia's college friends. Amanda was placed beside me, her presence my only comfort in the increasingly uncomfortable evening. "The salmon is quite good," offered an elderly aunt of Bradley's, clearly struggling to make conversation. "Do you enjoy fish, Mr. Miller?" "I do," I replied, though I usually prefer a different preparation than this. "Oh, are you a cook as well as a waiter?" she asked innocently. I started to correct her misunderstanding when I overheard Bradley's voice from the nearby head table. He was speaking to a group of his fraternity brothers who had gathered around to congratulate him. "See that guy over there?" Bradley said, pointing in my direction. "That is Sophia's dad." One of the friends squinted at me. "He looks familiar. What does he do?" Bradley laughed at the sound carrying clearly across the space between us. "He is just a waiter who got lucky with a TV gig. Started dating Sophia's mom when he was serving her table." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not because they were entirely untrue, but because of the contempt with which they were delivered. In that moment, every sacrifice I had made, every double shift worked, every burn and cut endured in hot kitchens, every missed bedtime story was reduced to just a waiter. Amanda's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight enough that I felt her wedding ring press into my skin. "Do not let him get to you," she whispered fiercely. But the damage was done. I saw several guests at nearby tables glance my way with newfound curiosity or worse pity. The elderly aunt beside me shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very interested in her dessert. I maintained my composure, decades of professional kitchen discipline serving me well. My face remained neutral, my posture straight. Inside, however, I felt hollow, a father who had given everything only to be dismissed by the man his daughter had chosen. More painful than Bradley's comment was Sophia's reaction, or rather lack thereof. She had clearly heard her husband's remark, a brief flicker of discomfort crossing her face before she laughed along with the group, her hand resting on Bradley's arm. In that moment, I realized I had lost her in a way that had nothing to do with marriage and everything to do with values. The daughter I had raised, the one I had worked so hard to provide for, was now embarrassed by the very work that had given her the privileges she enjoyed. I excused myself from the table, needing a moment alone. The restroom was blessedly empty, and I stood at the sink, splashing cold water on my face and trying to regain my equilibrium. "You are not going to make a scene," I told my reflection firmly. "This is her day. You will get through it with dignity." When I returned to the reception, the dancing was in full swing. I rejoined Amanda, who was watching the revelry with a fixed smile that did not reach her eyes. "Are you okay?" she asked, echoing our earlier conversation. "I will be," I assured her, though I was less confident than I sounded. "Let us try to enjoy what we can of this evening." The reception hall at the Harrington Country Club was designed to impress with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured lawns and a lake that reflected the setting sun. In addition to all the opulent decorations, large flat-screen televisions had been mounted on several walls, currently displaying a slideshow of Sophia and Bradley's relationship. I watched as images of their college years, vacations, and engagement flashed by. There were precious few photos of Sophia with Amanda and me, a visual representation of the distance that had grown between us. Bradley's father approached the head table and tapped his glass for attention. The room gradually quieted as he prepared to make another speech. "I would like to thank everyone for coming to celebrate Bradley and Sophia." He began, his voice carrying easily through the professional sound system. "As we all know, marriage is not just the union of two people, but of two families." He continued with platitudes about the joining of their illustrious Harrington legacy with the interesting background of the Miller family. Each word was technically polite but carried undercurrents of condescension. "While the Harringtons have been fortunate enough to build a legacy in law and business," Richard continued, "we welcome the diversity that Sophia brings to our family tradition." Amanda's hand tightened around mine, her knuckles white with tension. I kept my expression neutral through years of practice dealing with difficult restaurant patrons. As Richard concluded his speech to polite applause, one of the venue staff approached the wall of televisions and began adjusting something. The slideshow disappeared, replaced briefly by static, before resolving into a cable news channel. "Sorry, folks," called out the wedding coordinator, hurrying over. "We will have that fixed in a moment." But before anyone could change the channel, the news program cut to a special segment. The television host's voice filled the room. "We are back with our special live broadcast of American culinary icons, featuring the country's most influential chefs. Joining us next is Archer Miller, the man who revolutionized how Americans think about home cooking." The room fell silent as my face appeared on every television screen. I was dressed in my signature blue chef's coat, standing in a kitchen set, very different from the one I used on my regular show. Archer Miller began his career as a waiter before working his way up through some of the most demanding kitchens in the country, the host continued. Now, in the 8th season of his Emmy-nominated show, Classic American Kitchen, Archer has published 4 best-selling cookbooks and was recently named one of the top 10 most trusted culinary voices in the nation. The camera pulled back to reveal me cooking alongside James Peterson, one of Hollywood's biggest action movie stars, who had appeared as a guest on this special. "I have been a fan of Chef Miller for years," James was saying on screen. "What I love about his approach is how he honors traditional techniques while making them accessible to everyone. There is no pretension, just authentic food and genuine expertise." A strange energy rippled through the reception hall as guests looked back and forth between the television screens and where I sat in person. The silence was broken by the sound of a glass shattering. Bradley had dropped his champagne flute, his face a mask of shock and dawning comprehension. Sophia was staring at the screens, her expression a complex mixture of emotions I could not fully decipher. Pride, embarrassment, regret. Perhaps all three. "Is that really you?" asked the elderly aunt beside me, her eyes wide. "On television, with James Peterson." Before I could answer, the segment continued showing clips from my show and highlighting achievements. I rarely discussed the James Beard Award nomination, the Culinary Education Foundation I had established for underprivileged youth, the successful restaurant I had opened and then sold to my longtime sous chef. Beyond his culinary achievements, the host was saying, "Archer Miller has become an inspiration for late bloomers everywhere, proving that with dedication and passion, it is never too late to reinvent yourself." The venue staff finally managed to switch the televisions back to the wedding slideshow, but the damage, or perhaps the correction, had been done. The reception had irrevocably changed. Bradley's father stood frozen near the head table, champagne glass halfway to his lips. Victoria Harrington was whispering urgently to a friend, her eyes darting in my direction. And Bradley himself looked as though he had swallowed something extremely unpleasant. Guests began approaching our table, many holding out phones or napkins for autographs. The waitstaff, who had until that moment been professionally invisible as good service requires, began finding excuses to pass by our table. "Chef Miller," one young server said quietly as he refreshed my water glass. "I am in culinary school. Your book on foundational techniques changed how I approach cooking." I thanked him sincerely, remembering all too well what it felt like to be in his position. As the initial shock subsided, Bradley made his way toward our table, his smile strained and his eyes calculating. "Archer," he said, dropping the Mr. Miller he had used until that moment. "I had no idea your show was so successful. You should have said something." "Would it have mattered?" I asked simply. His discomfort was answer enough. Before he could formulate a response, Sophia appeared at his side, her expression troubled. "Dad, can we talk privately?" I nodded and followed her to a small antechamber off the main reception hall. Once the door closed behind us, she turned to face me, tears threatening to spill over her carefully applied makeup. "Why did not you tell Bradley about your career, about how successful you are?" The question surprised me. "Sophia, I have never hidden what I do. My name is on 4 cookbooks. My show has been on the air for 8 years. But you never talk about the awards or famous guests," she insisted. "You are so modest about everything." "I did not realize I needed to present my resume to be treated with respect," I said quietly. Her face crumpled slightly, the truth of my words hitting home. "Dad, I am so sorry about what Bradley said. He did not mean it." "I think he did," I replied. "And what hurts more is that you let him say it." A tear escaped, tracking through her makeup. I did not know how to respond. Everything happened so fast. "You have had a lifetime to learn how to stand up for what is right," I said, feeling every one of my 65 years. I thought I had taught you that much at least." Before she could respond, the door opened, and Bradley entered, his face now composed into a mask of contrition. "Archer, I want to apologize," he said smoothly. "My comment was completely inappropriate and uninformed." I noted that his apology came only after discovering my public success, not because he recognized the inherent disrespect in his original statement. "There is dignity in all honest work, Bradley," I said, meeting his eyes directly. "Whether waiting tables or arguing court cases, the only thing worthy of shame is treating others as beneath you." He had the grace to look momentarily abashed before his practiced charm reasserted itself. "Absolutely. Could not agree more. Listen, we should talk about potential opportunities. My father knows several network executives who might be interested in expanding your brand." And there it was, the immediate pivot to how my success might benefit him. I had encountered many Bradleys in my career, people who saw relationships as transactions and other people as stepping stones. "I am quite happy with my current team," I replied. "Now, if you will excuse me, I would like to rejoin my wife." I left them in the antechamber, Sophia looking torn, and Bradley already forming his next approach. As I walked back into the reception, I noticed Bradley's parents huddled with several friends, all of them glancing my way with new interest. Victoria broke away from the group and intercepted me before I could reach Amanda. "Archer," she said warmly, as though we had been dear friends all along, "we simply must have you over for dinner soon. I understand you recently cooked for the governor." "Among others," I replied neutrally. "Fascinating," she gushed. "You know my charity gala is coming up next month. Perhaps you might consider being our celebrity chef. It would be such a draw for donors." I thought of all the charitable events I participated in each year, carefully chosen organizations that aligned with my values of education and food security. "I will have my assistant send you the contact information for my booking agent," I said politely. "My schedule is quite full, but they handle all charitable requests." Her smile faltered slightly at not receiving an immediate yes, but she recovered quickly. Of course. So busy with your television commitments, I imagine." As I finally made my way back to Amanda, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was the catering manager, a dignified man in his 50s. "Chef Miller," he said respectfully, "the kitchen staff was hoping you might stop by before you leave tonight. Many of them are great admirers of your work." "I would be honored," I told him sincerely. Amanda stood as I approached our table, concern evident in her eyes. "How are you holding up?" "Ready to leave honestly," I admitted. "But I promised to visit the kitchen staff first." She smiled, the first genuine smile I had seen from her all evening. "Always taking care of the people behind the scenes. It is one of the things I love most about you." As the reception continued around us, I felt a strange sense of calm replace the hurt I had been carrying. The evening had exposed some painful truths about my relationship with my daughter and the values of the family she had married into. But it had also affirmed what I had always believed, that character reveals itself in how you treat others, especially those you perceive as having nothing to offer you. When the traditional parent dances began, Richard and Victoria took to the floor with Bradley. There was an awkward moment when Sophia stood alone, looking toward me with uncertainty. Setting aside my hurt, I joined her on the dance floor. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered as we began to move to the music. "For everything." "I have only ever wanted you to be happy," I told her honestly, "and to be someone who makes others feel valued." As we danced, I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes, perhaps the first step toward understanding the true cost of the choices she had made. Whether that seed would grow remained to be seen, but I had done what I could to plant it. After another hour, Amanda and I made our goodbyes. We visited the kitchen as promised, where I shook hands with every staff member from the executive chef to the dishwashers. I signed aprons and menus and listened to their stories with genuine interest. This was the best part of the evening, I told Amanda as we finally headed to our hotel. Because they recognized you, she asked. Because they saw me, I corrected her. The real me. Not as just a waiter or just a TV chef, but as someone who understands their work and respects what they do. As we drove away from the venue, the weight of the day's emotional roller coaster settled over us. Whatever came next with Sophia and her new family would require careful navigation and firm boundaries. But for tonight, I had maintained my dignity in the face of disrespect, and that was its own victory. 3 months passed before I heard directly from Sophia again. There had been the obligatory thank you note for our wedding gift. A handwritten card that felt formulaic and distant. Amanda maintained more regular contact, brief text exchanges that kept us minimally informed about Sophia's new life. During those months, I threw myself into work with renewed focus. We filmed the 9th season of Classic American Kitchen, emphasizing the theme of food as connection across generations and backgrounds. Perhaps it was therapeutic, my way of processing what had happened at the wedding. You seem different lately, observed Tony, my longtime director. More intense, but in a good way. The segments about family recipes have been some of our strongest material yet. I had not shared the details of the wedding with my team, preferring to keep my private disappointments separate from my professional life. But the experience had affected me, sharpening my appreciation for the authentic relationships I had built over the years. The production assistants who had been with me since the first season. The home economists who tested every recipe multiple times before it appeared on air. The camera operators who knew my movements so well they could anticipate where I would step next. These were people who had seen me at my best and worst, who respected the craft we created together. At home, Amanda and I had many conversations about Sophia Bradley and how to move forward. I do not want to cut her off, I told Amanda one evening as we sat on our back porch. But I cannot pretend that what happened did not hurt. She needs to take the first step, Amanda agreed. We raised her to know right from wrong. The ball is in her court. That first step came in the form of a text message asking if she could come over for dinner, just her no Bradley. We agreed, though I approached the evening with cautious optimism rather than expectations. Sophia arrived looking somewhat different than she had at the wedding. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that reminded me of her college days. "Hi, Dad," she said, her voice small as I opened the door. "Thanks for having me over." We embraced briefly, the gesture both familiar and awkward. Amanda joined us, her greeting warm but reserved. We moved to the kitchen where I was preparing a simple meal of roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans, the comfort food of Sophia's childhood. "Can I help?" she asked, hovering uncertainly near the island. "You can set the table," I suggested. "The plates are still in the same cabinet." As she moved around the kitchen, muscle memory guiding her to the correct drawers for silverware and napkins, I continued cooking. The familiar rhythm of chopping, stirring, and tasting helped ease the tension in the room. "It smells just like I remember," Sophia said, a note of wistfulness in her voice. "Some things do not change," I replied, meeting her eyes briefly before returning to the stove. Once we sat down to eat, the conversation remained cautious, centered on neutral topics. The unusually warm fall weather, a new exhibit at the art museum Amanda wanted to visit, the book I was currently reading. It was only after dinner, as we moved to the living room with cups of coffee, that Sophia finally addressed what had brought her here. "I owe you both an apology," she began, her hands wrapped tightly around her mug. "Especially you, Dad. The way you were treated at the wedding was inexcusable, and the fact that I did not stand up for you makes me ashamed." The words hung in the air between us, necessary but insufficient to heal the breach. "Why did not you?" I asked simply. "Stand up for me, that is." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. I wish I had a good answer. I got caught up in everything in being a Harrington and what that meant. I wanted so badly to fit into Bradley's world that I let myself forget the values you taught me. "And now," Amanda prompted gently. "Now I am seeing things more clearly," Sophia admitted. "The way Bradley and his family talk about people, the way they evaluate everyone based on status and usefulness. It was exciting at first being part of that exclusive world. But now," she trailed off, looking down at her hands, "now you are wondering if that is the world you want to live in." I finished for her. She nodded, a tear spilling over. "Bradley has been different since the wedding. He keeps dropping your name when it might benefit him, trying to get me to arrange meetings with your network contacts. Last week he suggested I ask you to feature his father's wine collection on your show." The calculation did not surprise me. "And what did you tell him? That your show is about making good food accessible, not showcasing millionaire wine collections," she replied with a ghost of a smile. "He did not take it well." We talked for hours that night, more openly than we had in years. Sophia shared her growing disillusionment with Bradley's values and the superficiality of many of their social connections. I spoke about my disappointment not in her choice of husband, but in her willingness to compromise her integrity to please him. "I do not know what to do," she confessed as the evening grew late. "I made vows." "Those vows go both ways," Amanda pointed out. "Marriage should be a partnership of equals, not one person constantly compromising who they are." "I need to try to make it work," Sophia said, though her voice lacked conviction. "But I also need to remember who I am, who you raised me to be." As she prepared to leave, I walked her to the door. "You are always welcome here," I told her, "no matter what happens with Bradley." "Thanks, Dad," she said, hugging me properly this time. "I have missed you both so much." Over the next few months, Sophia began visiting regularly, sometimes helping me test recipes for the show. Other times just talking with Amanda about the growing tensions in her marriage. Bradley never accompanied her, claiming business commitments that always seemed to coincide with these family dinners. Meanwhile, Bradley continued his attempts to capitalize on his connection to me, dropping my name at business functions and trying to arrange meetings with my professional contacts. I deflected these efforts politely, but firmly, unwilling to be used as a networking opportunity. During this time, my producer approached me with an idea for a special episode featuring family recipes and cooking traditions. "We want to showcase different generations cooking together," she explained. "Would Sophia be interested in appearing with you?" The idea appealed to me both professionally and personally. "I will ask her," I promised. When I mentioned it to Sophia during her next visit, her face lit up with genuine enthusiasm for the first time in months. "I would love that, Dad. Can we make Grandma's apple pie, the one you taught me when I was little?" We filmed the segment 2 weeks later, a Sunday afternoon in the studio kitchen. Sophia arrived without Bradley, though he had apparently wanted to accompany her. "He suddenly became very interested when he heard it was for television," she told me with a new awareness in her voice. "I told him it was a closed set." Working together on camera felt natural, the years of distance temporarily forgotten, as we fell into an easy rhythm of preparation and conversation. Sophia shared memories of cooking with me as a child, the rare but precious weekend mornings when I was not working and would make special pancakes or teach her simple techniques. My dad always said that good food is about more than ingredients, she told the camera with a genuine smile. It is about showing love through what you create and who you share it with. When the episode aired, it received some of our highest ratings of the season. Viewers responded to the authentic connection between us, the shared language of food bridging what had been broken. Bradley watched the episode with Sophia, his reaction revealing the growing divide between them. "You should have mentioned my law firm," he complained afterward. "Or at least had me there as your supportive husband. It was a missed branding opportunity." "It was not about branding," Sophia told me she had responded. "It was about reconnecting with my dad." Their argument escalated with Bradley accusing her of not prioritizing his career advancement, and Sophia finally standing up for herself and her values. "He just does not get it," she told me over coffee the next day. "He sees everything, even relationships, as transactions." "Some people do," I acknowledged. "The question is whether you can live that way for the rest of your life." I was careful not to push her toward any particular decision, respecting that her marriage was her choice to make. But I was proud to see her rediscovering her voice and the strength to use it. 2 weeks after the episode aired, Sophia arrived at our door unannounced, a small suitcase in hand and red-rimmed eyes suggesting recent tears. "Can I stay here for a while?" she asked. "I need some time to think." We welcomed her without question, setting up the guest room and giving her the space she needed. Over the following days, she shared more about the fundamental incompatibilities that had become impossible to ignore. "When I married him, I thought I wanted what he represented," she admitted one evening as she helped me prepare dinner. "Success status being part of something established and important." "And now?" I asked, handing her an onion to chop. "Now I realize that none of that matters if you lose yourself in the process," she said, her knife moving with the precision I had taught her years ago. "You and Mom built something real together, something based on love and mutual respect. I want that, not a marriage where I am just an accessory to someone else's ambition." I did not tell her what to do, but I made sure she knew she had our unconditional support, whatever she decided. A week later, she returned to the apartment she shared with Bradley for what she called an honest conversation about our future. When she returned that night, her expression was both sad and resolved. "We are going to try counseling," she told us. "But I made it clear that I will not compromise who I am anymore, and that includes my relationship with my family." Whether their marriage would survive remained uncertain, but what mattered most to me was that Sophia had reclaimed her voice and her values. The painful experience at the wedding had eventually led to a healing that might not have happened otherwise, forcing uncomfortable truths into the light where they could be addressed. As for me, the incident had reinforced what I had always believed, but sometimes forgotten in the pursuit of success, that true worth comes not from status or recognition, but from integrity, honest work, and genuine connections with others. One evening, as Sophia and I cooked dinner together, a simple ritual that had come to symbolize our reconnection, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Do you regret it, Dad, all those years of hard work and missed moments with the family?" I considered my answer carefully. "I regret specific moments I missed, yes. Your school plays some birthdays, those quiet, everyday moments that seem small but make up a life together." I turned down the heat under the sauce I was stirring. "But I do not regret working hard to build security for our family. What I learned too late was that security is not just financial, it is emotional too. The security of knowing your family respects who you are, not just what you provide." Sophia nodded, understanding in her eyes that had not been there before. I get that now, and I am sorry it took me so long. Well, I said, bumping her shoulder gently with mine, your old man was a bit of a late bloomer too. Seems to run in the family. We laughed together, the sound filling the kitchen with a warmth that had nothing to do with the oven and everything to do with healing. Life has a way of coming full circle when you least expect it. 1 year after the wedding that had so painfully exposed the fault lines in our family, I found myself once again preparing for a significant gathering, though under very different circumstances. Sophia had moved back home 3 months after her initial separation from Bradley. The counseling had revealed incompatibilities too fundamental to overcome, and she had filed for divorce, a process that was now nearly complete. The decision had been difficult, but ultimately liberating for her, a reclaiming of the values and identity she had temporarily set aside. I keep thinking about what you said, she told me one evening as we walked around the neighborhood, a habit we had developed during her time back home. About dignity being in how you treat others, not in what you achieve or acquire. Something I had to learn the hard way myself, I admitted. In kitchens, there is a hierarchy that can be brutal. I worked for chefs who believed that success gave them the right to demean those beneath them. I promised myself I would never become that person, no matter how far I climbed. We were preparing for a special episode of Classic American Kitchen, a milestone 100th episode that would feature a segment on how the show had evolved over the years. My producer had suggested including Sophia again, as viewers had responded so positively to our previous collaboration. We could make it a reflection on food traditions and how they adapt over time, she suggested, honoring the past while creating something new. The metaphor was not lost on either Sophia or me. The episode would air exactly 1 year after the wedding reception, where Bradley had dismissed me as just a waiter, a symmetry that felt appropriate. The day of filming our kitchen was bustling with the familiar controlled chaos of television production. Cameras, lights, sound equipment, and crew members filled the space, all working with the practiced efficiency of a team that had been together for many seasons. Sophia arrived early, helping with preparations and easily chatting with crew members she had come to know over the past months. Her confidence had returned along with a new sense of purpose. She had recently enrolled in culinary school, deciding to explore her own passion for food that had been reignited during our time cooking together. Nervous? I asked as the makeup artist finished with her. A little, she admitted, but the good kind of nervous, excited nervous. You will be great, I assured her. Just be yourself. The segment began with us preparing a traditional recipe from my mother, the same apple pie we had made in our first appearance together. But this time we would be giving it a contemporary twist, incorporating techniques and flavors that represented evolution while honoring tradition. Food is like family, I said to the camera as we worked side by side. The core remains the same, but it grows and adapts with each generation, each bringing their own unique contributions. Sophia added, and sometimes you need to step back and remember what matters most about the recipe, not the fancy presentation or impressing others, but the heart of what makes it special in the first place. We moved easily together in the kitchen, her skills noticeably improved from our previous filming. There was a natural rhythm to our interaction, the genetic connection between father and daughter, evident in small gestures and shared intuitions about the food. My dad taught me that waiting tables was actually valuable training for life, Sophia said during a moment of reflection. You learn to read people, to anticipate needs, to handle pressure with grace. Those lessons apply whether you are serving food or creating it. I glanced at her, surprised by the insight. She smiled, continuing, and he showed me that there is dignity in all honest work, that how you do something matters more than what you do. As we placed our finished creation in the oven, the camera pulled back to include Amanda, who had been invited to join for the final segment. The three of us sat at the kitchen island, sharing memories and hopes while waiting for the pie to bake. "What is next for both of you?" the director asked from off-camera, an unscripted moment that felt right for the occasion. "I am starting my second quarter of culinary school next week," Sophia answered, "and interning at Restaurante Valencia on weekends." "Starting at the bottom," I noted with pride. "Prep cook, right?" "Lots of chopping," she confirmed with a laugh. "But I want to learn every aspect just like you did." "And you, Archer," the director prompted. "After 100 episodes, what is next?" I looked at my wife and daughter, feeling a contentment that had nothing to do with television success and everything to do with the healing that had taken place over the past year. "Continuing to do what I love," I answered honestly. "Teaching people that good food does not have to be complicated or exclusive. And maybe," I added with a glance at Sophia, "mentoring the next generation of chefs along the way." The timer dinged, and together we removed the perfectly golden pie from the oven, setting it on the counter to cool. The camera zoomed in on the three of us, arms around each other, the image of family unity restored after a difficult journey. When filming wrapped, the crew applauded, many of them having witnessed the personal journey behind the professional one. My executive producer approached with a bottle of champagne. "To 100 episodes," she toasted, "and to family in all its complicated, wonderful forms." Later that evening, after everyone had left, Sophia, Amanda, and I sat at our kitchen table eating slices of the pie we had made on camera. "Do you ever miss it?" Sophia asked suddenly. "Waiting tables, I mean." I considered the question seriously. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it. When your only responsibility is to make sure people have a good meal and leave happy, there is something pure about that kind of service. "I understand that now," she said softly. "I thought I wanted status and recognition, but there is more satisfaction in creating something real, whether anyone knows your name or not." Amanda reached across the table, taking both our hands in hers. "I am proud of both of you," she said simply. The past year had been a journey of rediscovery for all of us. For Sophia, finding her way back to the values she had been raised with. For me, remembering that success meant nothing without connection to what truly mattered. For Amanda, seeing the family she had always believed in find its way back to solid ground. As we sat together in the kitchen, where so many meals and memories had been shared, I reflected on the strange path that had led us here. The humiliation at the wedding had been painful, but it had ultimately forced truths into the open that might otherwise have remained buried, creating space for genuine healing and growth. "I have been thinking," Sophia said, breaking the comfortable silence, "about starting a small catering business focused on accessible, high-quality food for everyday celebrations. Not the fancy society weddings, but the real moments that matter in people's lives." "That sounds wonderful," I told her sincerely, "and very much your own path." "Would you consider being my consultant?" she asked, a hint of her old uncertainty creeping into her voice. "Not because you are on TV or anything, but because you understand both the business and the heart of cooking." "I would be honored," I replied, my throat tight with emotion. "But you already have the most important ingredient for success." "My charming personality," she joked. "That too," I laughed. "But I meant understanding that what we do is ultimately about connection. Food brings people together, whether you are waiting tables, cooking on television, or catering a family celebration." as we continued talking into the night, planning and dreaming together. I felt profound gratitude for the journey we had taken. The path had not been straight or easy, but it had led us back to what mattered most: the authentic connections that define a life well lived, and the dignity that comes not from status or recognition, but from staying true to your values, no matter what title comes before your name. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone underestimated you only to be surprised later by who you really are? Or have you been in Sophia's position, temporarily losing sight of your values to fit into someone else's world? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more reflections on family dignity and the unexpected ways life teaches us what truly matters. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, the work you do does not define your worth, but how you do it reveals your character.